Welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and inside this brand new showcase, I'm excited to be checking out Primal: The Awakening, coming from Reggie Games. This in its final version, unlike the prototype, which I covered in the past. If you want to check out that coverage to give you a great idea as to the foundation of how to play Primal: The Awakening, it'll be in the top right-hand corner right now. But this video series is going to focus on setting up for something a little bit different. We're going on an expedition. Now, the second page of the rulebook sums up perfectly exactly what Primal: The Awakening is all about. If you have never heard of this game before, the overview at the very top of this page does a great job in describing it. It's a cooperative game for 1 to 4 players set in an epic fantasy world where humans are struggling to survive in an untamed wilderness. The game is played through a series of scenarios in which players take on the role of hunters battling monstrous creatures as they embark on quests to defend humanity and uncover the mystery of the awakening. As you can clearly see in the middle of the page, the prologue is where things start out. You begin your adventure here, and this is where all the learning happens. However, if you're watching this and you're interested in the game, or maybe you already own the game and you're trying to get a gist as to what the prologue entails, I definitely recommend checking out my prior coverage on the game, as it definitely fell into the prologue category and will certainly get you up to speed on the rules and how things flow and operate, because for this showcase series, we're jumping right past the prologue and into either the campaign or the expedition. These are the two major modes of the game, and they have pluses and minuses. The campaign mode is going to give you a story to be discovered as you go through. You're going to have the ability to craft, of course, crafting your weapons and equipment in a way that actually makes sense for you and gives you some nice synergies. And of course, you have character progression as you go through the experience. You'll also have monster progression because it's all tied to a story. So you'll see monsters in a specified order, and the difficulty level will be basically pinned down for you as you go through the campaign. On the opposite side of the coin, you have the expedition mode. This one's going to be a standalone scenario, so you only have so much time to do one scenario, and you want it to be more of a one-shot experience. Well, this is what you're looking for. It's going to be quicker and easier to set up because you don't have that stuff to manage in between like you would with a campaign mode, and I mean in between the different boss battles. And then you have customization options right off the hop because, well, you get to set yourself up based on the level that your character's going to come in as well as the specified level of the boss in terms of its difficulty. So a couple things there allowing for some extra customization. You can kind of tweak things in a way that best suits what you're after. Now, in this case, for this showcase, I have decided to go ahead and do an expedition. We're going to go on a little expedition together. We're going to choose a boss to go up against. We're going to set up 2 characters that I have not used on the channel before, and we're going to dig in and see if we can take that boss down. Going into this expedition, we have 2 new characters not seen on the channel before. We have Legionnaire, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, with a sword and shield. And on the right, we have Theoreg with a hammer. The other 2, which I used in the past, are these individuals right here. We had one with a great sword and one with a great bow. These are not part of the equation. We're going with a 2-player setup. I'll be controlling this solo with 2 characters. Now at this point, we're already a couple steps into setup. We already have the combat board in the center of the game table. We have our 2 characters selected, which we already know who they are. I've gone ahead and grabbed the 2 miniatures for both of the characters. Very easy to find as they match their actual illustrations on their character dashboards. And I've chosen the boss we're going up against. Our 2 hunters have gone out on an expedition together and have found a monster named Ozew. I'll be calling this monster Oz going forward. It's worth mentioning when playing solo, at a minimum, you have to control 2 hunters, but you can control more if you wish. Now, when you choose expedition mode, you're going to find the rules beginning on page 65, but during that read on page 65, you'll notice it does mention to reference the prologue setup near the beginning of the rulebook, just as a reference in terms of stats, which I'm going through right now. This is found on page 15. Now on page 15, once you get a few steps in, it'll start talking about populating the combat board itself with environmental tokens. But if you happen to have the terrain expansion, those environmental tokens come to life. There are 2 rocks in the top right-hand corner and 2 Bethanis in the bottom left-hand corner, if I'm pronouncing that right. Now, this monster's terrain setup for the combat board resides on page 75. There is an Expedition 1 and Expedition 2 setup. I've gone with the Expedition 1. Next, we place the round marker in the very first space of the round track in a column there on the right-hand side. You'll see the number 1 covered up. As we move along through the steps on page 15, it mentions to grab general components. So I've done this, placing them inside of game trays, which are not included inside the final version of the game, but it certainly helps keep things organized. You can find general components, which tokens I have here on page 13. We now shift our focus to setting up the monster area, so we grab the monsters dashboard. Next, you'll find the monster's health token, placing it in the 10th position on the health track in the top right. Next, I've shuffled up the behavior cards for this monster and placed them to the left of the monster's board. Now at this point, you're going to find the stance cards for the monster, and if you flip these cards over, for example, on the opposite side, instead of a 1, there's a 0. This is going to correlate to the level that you're currently playing. If you're playing at level 0, things will be easier. As you bump up the levels, and you can go from 0, 1, 2, 3, things get progressively tougher. I'm going to go ahead and not start at the base, as you likely saw in my prior videos. We'll jump up to level 1. You can choose to place one of the stance cards here and the rest off to the side, or as I did, just stack them in a pile in the leftmost slot. Now go ahead and find your peril cards for your monster. In this case, we have a stance 1, stance 2, and stance 3 peril card. Again, going to correspond to whatever stance you're currently on. So we're starting at stance 1. So both of the peril cards for that stance are in play, and they're both listed as permanent underneath. One will affect the start of the round, one will affect the end of the round, and later on, once we get to stance 3, this one will be a part of the equation. Next up, we have the objective card, and it's worth noting when gathering your peril cards as well as your objective card, it's always a good idea to take a look in the bottom right-hand corner. If you see this icon, you know you've got it on the right side. Next up, find the base attrition deck. Very easy to find. There'll be 10 cards that look the exact same on the back side. They're going to be black and white when you flip these over. Shuffle those and put them in the top left-hand corner. You'll have other attrition cards, which will actually vary in different colors, and you'll notice there's different iconography on them. These are the ones which are not considered part of the base deck. Now at this point, we have the monster set up, but there are some special rules. When going on an expedition, you're going to want to reference them. Every monster has their own special rules, and depending on what level you're playing at, a number of other factors, you can have changes to these special rules. So this is on page 75 for the monster we're going up against. It says the behavior deck setup. We're actually going to be leaving out a lightning behavior card out of the behavior deck. So we're going to find that, take it out. The card is considered to be out of play until a card ability instructs you to interact with it. Next up, the second one is going to be completely ignored because we're not playing at a level 2 or 3 difficulty. If we were, then this would actually matter. So there is no swarm deck as part of the setup. And if you're wondering what the swarm deck looks like, it looks like this, and it's easy to identify. As you flip the cards over on the opposite side, it states swarm right on them. So the first paragraph we're taking into account, the second one we can ignore being on level 1, and the third says a rumble deck is going to be set up. This one right here, we're going to shuffle these cards to form the rumble deck, placing it near the monster board. These cards are special cards that are unique to this monster, and they're explained actually in more detail on 96, but we'll talk more about them when we dive into gameplay. That's going to do it for the monster setup for now. We're going to move into the hunter setup. And actually, just before we move on to the hunters, I do want to make something very clear about the actual behavior cards for the monster up here. Based on page 60 of the rulebook, you'll see, depending on what level you are playing, specific icons will be taken from a number of cards to make up the behavior deck. So ensure that you've got the right ones for the right aggression level you've chosen. For me, I've got level 1, so this is going to be a difference than if I was creating from a level 0 or even a level 2 or 3. So always make sure you have the right behavioral cards for the aggression level of the enemy you're going up against. When we move into the hunter setup, we have two options in front of us. One, and this is a really good benefit for the expedition mode, is you can go through these steps in order to customize your deck to be exactly what you want. You can choose your weapon, armor, helm, and item card. You can choose your mastery. You can build your action deck. You can choose up to 3 potions. You basically have full choice in this regard. Or you can decide to flip to page 81 where there is pre-loadouts per the level that you've chosen. So I can actually go for my character per the level I've selected and just grab the cards that it dictates. Now this customization is a huge benefit to the expedition mode, so I recommend when you're doing it to actually go through these steps and enjoy the process of creating a character exactly the way you want it. But for the purposes of this video, we'll use one of the pre-constructed loadouts. So just so you can see what it looks like inside the rulebook, it's laid out very, very well across each of the characters. They have 2 pages that will show you not only the starting deck, but also deck lists 1, 2, and 3 across the different levels. I'm in level 1 aggression, so this is going to be the loadout if I choose to go with something that's already pre-constructed, or I could, of course, customize as you saw moments ago. So we're going to go ahead and grab all the components listed here. I'll flip the page, find my next hunter, and do the exact same thing. Here are the pre-built level 1 loadouts for both of my hunters. We'll start over here with LJ on the left-hand side. And here's a look at his loadout, all in the specified spots on the dashboard. There are certain spots which will have icons, which are found on the backs of these cards. Very easy to determine where everything goes. Now let's get Thelreg all equipped. With both of my hunters now set up with their starting equipment, let's find the action decks for both of them. The action decks for both of my hunters to the left of both of their dashboards. Each of those decks have been shuffled, and again, because I'm going with pre-built based on level 1, pages 81 and beyond give me exactly which card should be in this deck as well as this deck for both my hunters. We also have a mastery for each of them, which is going to be sitting to the right of their dashboard. The mastery card for both of my hunters is on its unfocused side. Now we need to place the aggro token to start things off. I'm going to choose to place it on the individual with the shield. It just sounds right to me. For each of the hunters, you'll draw 5 cards from the action deck. This will be their starting hand. That concludes the character setup, and only one thing left to do on the monster board. From the behavior deck of the monster to the left of its dashboard, I'm going to draw 3 behavior cards and then place them face down in the 3 slots of the dashboard without looking. And just like that, we are set up and ready to play. And that, my friends, is everything involved with setting up for an expedition mode play of Primal the Awakening from Reggie Games. Really hope this was informative. If you've got this game on the shelf, maybe still in shrink, maybe you haven't tackled it yet, I really hope this video helps you get the games to the table that much faster. Expedition mode is an exciting way to go ahead and pick and choose which monster you want to go up against using whichever characters you wish, and even being able to customize your loadout if you so desire. Or you can go the streamline route, which I did here, based on the aggression level. Grabbing a pre-customized loadout for your characters gets the game to the table that much quicker, so you get right to the fun of it. And in the next episode, we're going to dive straight into gameplay to see whether my 2 characters can take down the monster and we can pull off a victory. We'll see. Stay tuned, and as always, keep on rolling solo.